Well, Brandon, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to have this conversation. I know you and I connected a few months back. I want to say at a Naturally San Diego event. Is that where we first met?
Did. Yeah, it was the local, Naturally San Diego event down in, I think it was Encinitas. Yeah, a bunch of D2C brands and got to meet you there. So yeah, and we've just kind of kept in touch ever since. I think it was a good 6 months ago, 7 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, time's definitely flying this year, but the
hmm
first the first exposure that I had at all to fulfillment, 3PLs, or anything in that world was actually our conversation, and then the subsequent conversations we've had since then. So we're definitely excited to bring it to the community and dive into what it is you do and what ShipCalm does. But before we even head into that, I would love to get some backstory on you and your career and how you kind of ended up in this space.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm glad that I'm your only view into the 3PL world. So I've got that kind of like locked in. No, it's pretty cool. So yeah, I think I've been in logistics, the supply chain space for just about 3 years, and before that, I was in the real estate, private equity, debt side of the business in the world. So I ran sales and growth and revenue for two kind of private equity funds who lent money to real estate investors, entrepreneurs, if you will. So we were providing capital for them to, kind of fix and flip properties, but really working with the entrepreneurial, mindset and business owner, self-made people who are trying to, make a living flipping homes and building their business, running their own P&L, making, big business decisions, acquiring debt, and kind of ran the sales and growth engines of both of those businesses, and so built out the sales team and worked kind of hand in hand day to day with entrepreneurs. And one of the models was, kind of the second fund that we ran was a bit of a fund the deal, with capital, and then originated a loan, and then we'd sell it off to the secondary markets. Well, when COVID happened in 2020, the secondary markets stopped buying loans and things kind of dried up a lot on that side of the space. Myself, I would, love working with entrepreneurs. That's been a passion of mine, helping businesses grow. That's why I really like that space. But when we worked through these loans, I was kind of getting, an interest in trying to expand and get into something a little bit different. And good friend of mine, family friend for 10 plus years, Greg Moser, who's our current CEO of ShipCalm, reached out when I was kind of looking to, get interest into some different industries, and said, "Hey, Brendan, I know you've worked with entrepreneurs, startup brands, startup companies for many years, also built sales teams and, kind of built the growth engine of the old businesses you were with. I'm looking for somebody. We just opened up 165,000 square feet of warehouse space in Plainfield, Indiana. We got to fill this up. Here's our business. Here's what we do. Here's why it's exciting. I think it'd be a great fit." And, kind of one thing led to the next, and I decided to join ShipCalm, and this was like 3 years ago. So, that's been kind of my entry point into the space, learning supply chain and logistics, as we go at what they say, a fire hose kind of in your face, learning a whole new acronym, learning, new language and stuff like that. But fundamentally, the same type of business, in the sense of working with entrepreneurs and working with brands and people who are trying to make a living selling some sort of product. And so it's been a nice transition. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of challenges, a lot of learning curve, and helping really kind of shape ShipCalm for the future, and be on the front side of kind of growth. So that's a little bit of my journey, one industry to the next. And I really enjoy this space. I think there's a lot to offer. I really like working with, the different types of brands, and I just see so much opportunity and ways, not only from the tech side, but from the fulfillment and warehousing side, to help make our customers more successful, more so than I ever even thought when I first started getting into this business.
And I love that you mentioned coming as an outsider and kind of like having to learn everything as you went, because you mentioned acronyms. Everything about CPG seems to be an acronym, like
Hmm.
CPG, 3PL, the list goes on. I'll say them in conversation and then realize that I have no idea if the person I'm talking to has a background in that. So for you coming into this space, I think for people that may be tuning in that don't have as much background, like what's the elementary description of what fulfillment is? What does a 3PL do? And how did you kind of learn about that?
Yeah, great question. So fundamentally, high level, 30,000 feet, you know, fulfillment is essentially picking and packing uh, products for e-commerce or digitally native brands and fulfilling orders for them at a small scale to a large scale. So a 3PL has a lot of different kind of prongs into a business. And there's your traditional 3PL, which has historically been pallet in, pallet out, kind of handling for big brands. You know, Coca-Cola uses 3PLs. You know, these big brands will use 3PLs as just in and out movement. And then there's the 3PL on just the B2B side. So retail, so sending stuff into Target, into Kohl's, into Ulta, Sephora, things of that nature. And then there's a 3PL who does D2C brand shipping for and fulfillment for brands, you know, picking and packing little widgets, right? You know, baby monitors and smaller type products, and doing the D2C Shopify fulfillment for brands as well. And then you have your Amazon, which we're all quite familiar with, and 3PLs, you know, kind of actually work in concert with Amazon in the sense of replenishing for Amazon for brands. So a brand would use a 3PL to help send product into Amazon for them and manage inventory and work with Amazon in that retrospect. But high level, we're the four walls that are holding a product. And when an order comes in from wherever it does in the ether of wherever you're selling it, we're funneling that into our world. We're picking and packing that order, putting it in a label on it, putting it in a box, and getting it out the door to its end buyer. And that's the highest kind of, you know, 30,000 foot view of a 3PL.
Perfect. No, I think that explains it great. And since it does kind of run the gamut of like those small products, maybe distributed on Amazon, up to these massive brands in retail, like what's your sweet spot and what kind of brands do you typically work with?
Yeah. So we typically work with, you just mentioned CPG brands. You know, the range in revenue is kind of how I like to look at it. And I also touch on industries a little bit, but revenue size, we're typically in a $1 to $100 million size in revenue. And you'll be like, Brandon, that's a pretty big gap, right? But when you hit kind of your 1 to 5, you kind of hit those 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, it moves pretty quickly. You know, our perfect sweet spot, if you were to say, hey, gun to your head, where do you like to be? You know, 1 million to kind of 25 to 30 million is kind of our real sweet spot, because we're really a part of the brand's growth. We're really in, you know, a part of their operations. They're relying on us for decision making. We're working hand in hand with them on a day-to-day basis to really help take them from one, you know, 5 to 10 million up to that $100 million brand. We don't focus in on cold storage or any sort of frozen type products. That in itself is a whole world that's challenging, from just moving product and storing product. And we really just kind of stay away from, you know, kind of alcohol, liquor, spirits, and things of that nature. And also perishable goods isn't really kind of our wheelhouse. So CPG brands, you know, industries that we like to focus in on, beauty, healthcare products, you know, sporting goods, household goods, anything kind of in the baby, you know, product clothes realm. Apparel and footwear is a focus of ours as well. And we try to, you know, really strive to find brands that are, like I said, in kind of that 1 million to 25 million, where they're just tired of fulfilling stuff on their own. Maybe they've had a bunch of products in their, you know, garage, or products are sitting, you know, in their household, and, you know, their significant other like, you got to get this out of here. And we are kind of that entry point to help them scale, you know, their business from kind of that, you know, entry seed level to, you know, that multi-million dollar brand.
Well, our mutual friend, Jonathan at Vizer, you know, I think that was the situation where it was
Yep.
not his girlfriend, but his co-founder's girlfriend, like, you got to get this product out of our house. So I definitely hear that. I'm curious, like, is there a point where operationally the brand may feel that pain point of like, hey, we want to get this moved out of our office, our space, we want to work with a provider, but you would say, hey, the timing may be a little early. Like, what's that inflection point operationally where you're like, okay, now's the time to pull the trigger on working with fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it varies from brand to brand. However, if you were to look at it from orders of magnitude and orders specifically, where we see it makes sense to kind of make a move to a 3PL is when you're doing, call it 250 orders plus a month, is kind of where it makes a little bit more sense to do that. As well as you expand and you are complicating your supply chain and your channel fulfillment. And what I mean by that is if you're a D2C brand and you've been kind of cooking along and selling on Shopify and doing it on your website, and then Target has approached you and Walmart is now approaching you, and you have opportunities in front of you where these big POs have come in, and the complexity of trying to fulfill those orders can be a daunting task for any small brand, let alone a large brand. And so as those channels, expand and as their order volume expands, I think that's a really key factor when you want to move into a 3PL. The other side of it too is dealing with inventory. And when you run out of space at your current provider or your current house, I guess I should say, and you are trying to manage, ordering stuff from China and having that stuff come into this work, into the US or wherever it needs to be, and have a landing spot for it. When you're starting to talk about containers and pallets coming in, you need to look at having a 3PL, a place to store those goods, and then let alone fulfill it. And then I think the other piece of it is, there's a point where when you're losing, your time spent as an operator, as an owner of putting labels on boxes and dealing with FedEx and dealing with returns and spending a lot of time in the operation side of it, when you could be spending time on growing the business and spending, ad dollars and working on your ad campaigns, and you're now missing out on your own, you're missing out on your time to help grow the business because you're working on, the fundamental side of the operations, which, for lack of a better term, it's not a sexy business. It needs to be done. But, a lot of our customers, came up with a great idea, have a really exciting, platform. They have a sales and marketing background, and they need to go grow the business. And, when you start to take away from the time to create more sales, I think that's a time where you need to look at the business and kind of outsource it to a 3PL.
I would totally agree on the growth story piece and kind of like the energetics of that. I've always said, like, we don't manufacture products, but conceptually, if I was going to sell 1,000 more products, but then I knew I had to go home and box them, I'm probably not as eager to double my ad spend. But if I know I can double it, I can see, that revenue come in, it's handled on the back end, I'm definitely more incentivized to do it. And I want to hop back for a second because I really remember our early conversations about this and touching on the retail piece and thinking that was super interesting. So kind of pulling back the curtain on what does it look like when a brand, maybe they do get that placement on Target's website. What are the next steps that happen once they're working with the retailer?
Yeah, so I like to use kind of specific examples that have worked for us and why brands have come to us, and where we've been able to kind of help we like to call it the logistical complexity barrier, and kind of break that down. And so on the retail side, if a Target shows up to your world and they love your product and they say, Samantha, I am going to write a $100,000 PO and I need, 1 million units from you. The specifications and the requirements from Target to fulfill those orders is a whole other side of the business that we kind of work on and help our customers with. And what I mean by that is Target has their own world. They have their marketplace. They have either their drop ship. They have a place where you go onto Target online, you buy this product, All right, we fulfill that as ShipCalm. Well, there's data that has to go back and forth. There's order requirements. There's certain packaging. There's a certain freight that actually has to be used. So we on the fulfillment side, we do all of that for the brand. So you don't have to worry about, hey, did the package go out with the right carrier? Did you guys package it right? How did you guys set up all of the data to go back and forth between Target so that when we ship the order, tracking goes to the Target marketplace so the customer has a seamless experience? So basically what happens is Target says, cool, here's a contract, but here's a thick guide of what you need to do to get this orders out the door. And as a brand, you're like, oh no, this is a lot. And so we take that brand or that book of guidelines, and we have it set up in our system so that we write the right processes, we do the proper fulfillment, we cover all of the channels, we even take photos of everything to make sure that product goes out the right way, so that if Target comes back and says, hey, this order didn't go out the right way, or we didn't get product this way, we have backup for the brand. So we handle all of the logistics and the technical piece of it so that orders can flow seamlessly. And again, you can go back and sell on Target, spend more money with Target on ads, and really lean on ShipCalm or any 3PL for that matter who does B2B and retail to fulfill that order without any kind of troubles or issues. And it just really offers the brand the non-stress of, hey, if all these retailers come to me and want my product, I know that I have a 3PL that can go and execute for them. And they're all different. Target's different than Kohl's, and Kohl's is different than Walmart, and Ulta is different than Target. So you just have to be well-versed in all of them.
And I think you get charged if you do it improperly, right? Like there's a financial cost.
For sure. And it's funny, these retailers and Amazon specifically too, sometimes are incentivized to do chargebacks, and they're looking for ways to penalize brands, whether it be the way the labels were put on the pallets when they came to Target, or the way the pallet was wrapped when it came into Target. So we have built systems so that we can combat that and be able to provide proof to the brand and say, hey, no, this went out the right way. You need to not influence this or enact this chargeback. This is not right. And that is a thing. And chargebacks are a huge thing for brands right now. Because Target and Amazon, they work on such small margins, they got to find ways to, create more profit for them. And if you're not a brand and if you're a brand not working with a 3PL, or you're doing it yourself and don't have your eyes and ears on that, you can see some significant charges that just kill any profit that you had, for those orders.
Are there any not specific brands, but wild stories you've heard of just a retailer coming back and saying oh, XYZ was an issue and that having a massive expense to a brand?
Yeah, so we I won't say the retailer. Well, actually, I don't care. It's Ulta. It was doing we have a beauty brand that we were sending stuff into Ulta, and it was a big PO. I mean, I think we sent in, I want to say 10 pallets, and this is cosmetic stuff. So 10 pallets of lipsticks and eyeliners and things of that. I mean, that's a lot of units. I don't remember how many units it was, but they claimed that we sent it short, that the product didn't come in short. So then what they do is they hit you with how much the delta is on the short, and then they try to hit you for the future sales they missed out on because you sent it in short and they had all this stuff. So orders of magnitude, I mean, it was, basically what would have happened was, even though this brand would have put their stuff in Ulta, they would have lost money on every single one of their orders with the amount of chargebacks that were going to happen. Luckily, we took pictures and we have a process around all this. We have photos of everything, documentation of the packing list and everything that goes out. And we were able to provide this to Ulta. I was actually the one doing some of the work and going through the email chains and pushing back and saying, no, the stuff was done right. And we ended up getting, all those charges reversed because it ended up being just a miscount on their side. And the brand would have, if they didn't have the support and they didn't have, the help from the 3PL, they would have been in a lot of trouble there.
Thanks for sharing that story. Because yeah, I mean, there could be honest mistakes on all sides, right? But if you don't have the data to back it up, or the photos, to the string to follow and say, no, look, like, to your point, you could be losing money on a massive order that you probably invested to manufacture in the first place. And, if retailers have thin margins, brands certainly have thin margins. So I'm sure that goes the extra mile and kind of giving them peace of mind. Are there other like data and analytics that you're providing to brands that you think is like impactful or servicing?
Yeah, great question. So, that's part of the three kind of pillars that we offer to our customers. So we have the tech kind of in the channel connectivity, and we can plug and play into kind of really any sort of selling channel that you have out there as a brand. So we manage that on the tech and software side. We have the fulfillment and warehousing, so that we have the operations and the physical infrastructure. And then we also offer kind of professional service as well to our brands. So think of like a fractional COO or a fractional director of operations, that you don't want to go pay someone $200,000 a year for a COO when you're a startup brand, but you can actually have a fractional COO, and we offer those services. As it relates to kind of tech and sort of insights, we like to call them data insights or business intelligence tools for our customers. One of the biggest things and one of the largest challenges that brands deal with is inventory fluctuation and managing inventory and not selling too much or selling too little and missing out on sales and whatnot. So we have built out some proprietary technology at ShipCalm where, inventory is decremented automatically. So you sell something on Shopify, it automatically decrements in our warehouse management system. You have a dashboard that you'll see that every single day, so you understand exactly how much inventory you have. But further to that, once we start to kind of understand your business a little bit, and it takes, call it 30, 60 days, probably closer to 60 days, and we start to understand SKU velocity and how quickly does this SKU sell versus this one, we can predict when you should start to plan inventory and when you should start to reach out to your manufacturer and start to order stuff in. So we're providing those kind of insights into your business, as well as clear, transparent freight costs. No hiding of freight costs. No bundling everything into one net charge for you, so you're not too sure what your cost of goods are. Because as a brand, you want to be able to break everything out and say, okay, my freight is X, my picking and packing fulfillment is Y, my storage costs are Z, and be able to kind of like see where you can move the needle. And some 3PLs just kind of all bundle in one, just say, hey, here you go, figure it out. And we share those analytics with our customers. They have open visibility into our WMS. I kind of have this phrase that I coined. My operations team would probably not like it that much, but it is true. This is kind of how we operate. Is our warehouse is your warehouse. You have dollars, like potentially millions of dollars sitting at our warehouse. So I look at it as your inventory is like your bank account. Could you imagine showing up to your bank account tomorrow and you had, let's call it $10,000 less in your bank account? You just woke up. That's how inventory should be treated, with your brands. And 3PLs take it way too loosely. Like, oh, 100 units. Sorry, they're just not here, or we miscounted or something. That's $100 worth or 100 units worth of potential profit that a brand just missed out on. So inventory, data analytics, and understanding the business is something that we really pride ourselves in pushing to our customers and helping give insights there.
Yeah, I love that focus on transparency, because it just gives people the information they need to make good decisions. And you vocalized it a few times between like the fractional support, like C-suite support that you offer, and their warehouse being your warehouse, things like that. It seems like the relationship between the brand is really important in your organization. And like, what are things that you do to cultivate that relationship? Maybe I feel like I see you at a ton of events in the community, like in the CPG space.
Yeah, I think that's something that we pride ourselves on at ShipCalm, is our customer, service, if you will, for lack of a better term, but our openness with our customers and collaboration and ability to work with them on any challenges and struggles they have. There's always going to be issues within logistics, supply chain, fulfillment. There's always challenges in any business that you're running, but having a company that you can reach out to, work through certain situations and work through problems that arise, I think is what helps separate us from a lot of our competitors, and adjusting, things to make things a little bit more, easier or more palatable for customers at certain times. I mean, I remember last year, for example, supply chain was wild in the sense of everybody's inventory was sitting on the water for months. We all remember the containers and the boats of product that was sitting on there. And then all of a sudden it flooded into, we finally got it in here and people had overstock. People had too much product. And instead of like, putting a customer in a point of increasing storage costs or just keeping them the same, we worked with customers and tried to bring costs down for them so that they could work through and sell through inventory, because it was a struggle and it was a pain point. So we really connect with our brands on a daily basis, multiple times a day. We open our selling channels up. You can, as a brand, talk with our inventory person. You can talk with our fulfillment person on the floor if you need to. Like, there's that type of connectivity. And I think that that's what helps separate us to, help our brands grow and really, work through kind of any issues that arise.
Love the idea of like having your operations coordinator on speed dial on the floor.
Yep.
What's happening with my packaging?
100%. Exactly. It makes a lot of help, and it gives a sense of comfort too, and for the brand to be able to, because the brands that we work with, they're creative, new ideas. Oh, I want to package this today. I want to do this. I want to do a marketing insert. Oh, I need some gift messaging for some, influencer packages. You need to be able to have a 3PL that can work with you on that kind of stuff. So, we open that up.
Super cool. And I don't know if you're able to talk about this because it may be like proprietary, but your words, not mine. You said it's like not the sexiest industry. I disagree because it's like powering all of these things, right? But what are you doing from like an innovation perspective, or like what, looking forward, what are things that you think you can bring to this space that historically has not been there to serve brands?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll touch on as much as I can without opening up, our future way of looking at things. I think the fractional services that we've offered, and this is a new thing that ShipCalm's doing. It's providing, the operational support, not just because we have our day-to-day work and we have our day-to-day, that comes with the ShipCalm package, if you will, but bringing in industry, experts in supply chain, in, working with manufacturers in China, being able to help you kind of really be your full operations, not just picking and packing and putting labels on boxes and, moving product around from you, but inventory planning and working with your manufacturers to get better costs, coming up with creative ideas, being, basically a seat on the bus with you as your brand, I think is going to be super helpful for brands going forward, especially because we're bringing the cost of that down, where you're not paying $200,000 for a COO, which, or $250,000, but you're getting COO level type, I guess, level of commitment to you as a brand, where they're working for you a couple hours, 3, 5, 10 hours a week, and you can kind of play with that a little bit. So I think that there's that piece of connectivity to the brand. But I think like on a tech side, and where we really see the business, in an interesting way, and I will only touch on what we're doing and where we're heading, but as a brand, just think about the ability to connect real time, basically virtually, with the fulfillment house and be able to make changes to your products on the fly, talk to the warehouse, add a certain SKU to a bundle that you weren't sure you wanted to do, or see what that looks like in real time. Those are where we're heading, and where we want to be able to connect to the brand and talk to them real time, so they can make changes, they can make adjustments, we can provide feedback. Yes, you guys package that perfectly. Oh no, move this around. Let's put some, special, writing here. Let's create this box here. Let's do some stuff on the fly in real time versus an email or a Slack or something that we can kind of lose, so that we can create that quick, fast change and allow brands to, just be creative and create new experiences for their customer is something that where we're headed is that connectivity piece, which I think will be really, really cool and something that we're really excited about.
Sounds awesome, especially like taking all of the things that you've touched on and digitizing them, like digitizing that relationship, digitizing the transparency, digitizing that touch point. So I think it sounds very exciting.
Well, thank you.
I could ask you questions all day, but we have a handful of people sending questions prior to the webinar. So I have a list I'm going to go through that were shared with us as well. One is, and it's kind of touching on a little bit of what we discussed, but like the emerging trends in fulfillment that people should be aware of as they're making their plans for the years, or they're making their plans for what retailers they may want to try to get into. Like, what are things on your radar that would be valuable for a brand listening to know?
Yeah, I think because I'm, in it today at a conference, is all the different marketplaces that are popping up, and Target Marketplace, Macy's Marketplace, Bloomingdale's just launched their marketplace. There these other channels and other ways to sell your product and get things up and going is something to really keep an eye on, and is an emerging topic, and is something that's really interesting in the space as brands grow and are trying to scale and try to figure out where else they can sell. Being omni-channel is something that if you're a brand and you're just loving Shopify and it's just easy and it's nice, that's awesome. Don't get me wrong. But I think more and more of the buyers and the customers are searching online and being omni-channel and looking to get your product into retail and on Target shelves and on Target marketplaces and Kohl's and all that, I think is a must. And it's something that maybe some brands were scared of and a little shy of. But I think that the way the tech is moving forward and the ability to connect with these channels and the way 3PLs are working with them, especially, us, and the way they're opening up their world is making it easier for brands to kind of get there. And they're welcoming brands. I just heard from the Macy's marketplace, they want all kinds of brands from all sizes. So, any brand that's listening out there, you have an opportunity to be on Macy's and Target. And those doors are becoming, not as hard to knock through. So I think that that's something to definitely look into, and then it's more of a macro level type stuff. But I always look at, one of our things is looking at, non-discretionary type products. So products that, are going to work through recession, right? And stay, things get tight, right? People's capital spending is tight, but there's certain products that we're always going to be spending on, and buying because we need it as consumers, health, pet products, baby products, all those things that we need to survive and continue to, keep things going. I always, we're akin to those types of those brands. So, always keep your kind of eyes and ears as you're expanding your SKUs and expanding, kind of your marketplace as well. So those are some trends that I would look at, but definitely marketplaces is becoming a thing.
Yeah, I'll echo both of those. I mean, we're pretty deep in retail, and just that kind of movement, like D2C to retail, but like the cross of these online marketplaces has been really big. I agree.
Yep.
And then consumables in this economy definitely are going to be well utilized. And another question we got earlier, and I was reflecting on it, I thought it was interesting and would love to hear your perspective, is the sustainability angle to things in fulfillment. Like where do you think things are going in that direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I might get a lot of flack for this one, but I'm going to be honest and transparent. I think sustainability is a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
I think people use that word way too loosely right now. I think it's thrown on pitch decks. I think it's thrown in sales pitches. I think brands use it when they're selling. I think 3PLs use it when they're doing this. Let's be honest. If we sustain where we are today, things are not going to be good in our world. We need to regenerate. And so I like the word, and I'm going to make it up, regeneratability. All right. And that's where I see things. And that's, you can coin that. And if anyone else listening will phrase that and trademark that thing. But I think that's where we see things. So it's, it's trying to, how do we do better? How do we not just, keep the same status quo and continue to do, what we're doing? Because if we do, we're sustaining, things that are, as we've already seen, we're doing a lot of damage out there to our earth and in things in general. So we need to find ways to regenerate. Do I have the solve for that? Absolutely not. We have some ideas for sure, but that's how I look at it. I think we need to change the way we look at, sustainability and say it's not working. We need to regenerate things.
And it kind of ties all the way back to the beginning, right? Like all of these acronyms, there's also a ton of buzzwords. So the more
Yep.
that we can just bring back the things you're talking about, which is like transparency, relationship building, working together, I think that also will impact regenerability. Was that the word?
I think so. I just made it up. So we'll play with that as we go.
I'm sure somebody will reach out and tell us, oh, there is a word for this. And like, this is what it is. But until then, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this insight with us. We really appreciate you taking the time. And if somebody wanted to connect with you or wanted to connect with ShipCalm, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, the best way to connect with ShipCalm is sales@shipcalm.com. If you're looking for sort of any inquiry into the business, you want to find out pricing and costs and see what we're all about, and learn a little bit about how we can help you as a brand. We also can visit our website, ShipCalm, www.shipcalm.com. And we have a connect to sales. Our pricing is actually live on the website. So you can take a look at that as well. And I'm happy to obviously talk to any brand that wants to chat or anybody that has any questions about this. And you can just email me at Brandon, BRANDON @shipcalm.com. I'd be happy to help you talk through any of the things we talked about today and just see how we can make you more successful. And at the end of the day, that's our mission. Our vision is make our customers more successful here. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Anytime I can get invited to something like this, it means a lot. And, I respect you and what you're doing with Vizer, and I really appreciate our partnership as well. So.
Well, thank you. And he's not selling this well, but he's also active on LinkedIn and he posts great posts. So go follow Brandon on LinkedIn as well. And we will chat soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.